Okay, we're good.
All right. Here we go. Ryan Nitz, welcome to the Millhouse.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. We got the young blood. We got
youngest-
young blood.
youngest on the Millhouse.
You're the youngest guest by 40-some years.
That's
over this
awesome.
last week.
I don't always feel it now. Now that I'm 31, it's not 21 anymore.
No, but you're still so young. It's awesome. When I first saw you, Nikki showed me some video of you catching these monster snook, and it was so exciting to see you, in this canoe, these monster fish feeding right next to the boat, and it's like, wow, man, that guy's cool. And in that regard, we've had the snook guys. I know that you're a passionate turkey hunter, deer hunter, snook fisherman. So it kind of comes full circle with us. But, we've interviewed, I think one of the greatest names in snook fishing is David Justice. Some old-time guys that you might not even know that well. George Copeland we just had, Tommy Green. And we'll get into that because I know you got yourself really on Instagram with like 50,000 followers from your snook fishing. But I'd like to start with that, the Instagram post. And how hard was that? And what kind of war you waged in the early years being on Instagram, catching all these fish, the naysayers, etc., and all of a sudden all the following. Talk about that progression.
Yeah, for the most part, it all came real organic for me. I started out on a plastic canoe that I bought from Sports Authority. I started fishing this river. I've lived here in Jupiter my whole life for 31 years. So as soon as I was, 8 or 9 years old or whatever, 10 years old, and my mom would let me, well, actually it all started bass fishing, believe it or not. My mom and dad would drop me off at my grandma's, and she had these 2 ponds in her development, and I would walk around that pond every day, all day long, and I'd catch every bass in that pond over and over again. And so that's kind of what set it. And then, my house here in Jupiter, it's maybe a half mile from the river. So when I was, 15, my mom would let me finally take my bike by myself with my friends, and we'd go down there. And every day after school, I would fish that river. Just, I'd wade up to my chest every single day. And then one day my dad came home and was like, hey, this was when Sports Authority was going out of business. And he said, there's a canoe in there. You should go look at it. And I was like, I don't want a freaking canoe. What am I going to do with a canoe? He's like, it's pretty cool. Go check it out. I was like, no. 2 weeks goes by. He goes, hey, the canoe's still there. You should go check it out. I was like, no. Well, one day I go in there to go buy some hooks or something one day, and I see the canoe. And I'm like, man, that's kind of cool. It was green. It was plastic. It had like a little molded transom in the back where you could put a trolling motor. And so I was like, hey, is this still on sale? The little sales associate was there, and she goes, no, it's not on sale anymore, but I got you. So she rang it up for like $250. I bought a $100 trolling motor, and I bought a $100 battery. So for under $500, I was out on the water. So started doing that, and bought a GoPro, the original GoPro, and stuck it on my head, and that was it. Started going out there, started getting pulled around with some of these big snook, and I would just take the clip and throw it on Instagram. Originally, I never even wanted an Instagram, wanted nothing to do with it, and my girlfriend kept saying, just get one, everyone's got one, just get one. I was like, I don't want it. Well, I finally got one, started posting some of those pictures with the GoPro. I would put the GoPro on time lapse and, take all these photos, and I was getting some unique shots. And, I started posting it on there, and people started loving it. People were going nuts over it. So I was like, man, maybe I got something going here.
How big were these snook you were catching at the time?
When I started out, I started with, 6-inch snook, catching them on crappie jigs in the creek. And then I worked my way up to throwing little pins minnows, catching, foot-long snook. And so
initially on the Instagram post, you were catching small fish.
Yeah, I would say so.
And the audience wasn't that vibrant at the time? Or you were getting some likes?
I was getting some likes. At that time, it wasn't probably the big snook doing it. It was just more of the creative angles that I was doing. I'd throw a GoPro under the water and let it sit underwater for like 30 minutes. And I would have snook swimming by, and I would post pictures like that. I would have like a rattlesnake attacking the camera.
So cool.
Yeah. So
it was just a love to get the footage. It wasn't like forward thinking, like I'm going to become a guide and I'm going to build up my audience.
Never ever thought about being, I mean, in high school and stuff, I was, always thought about maybe being a guide, or not even thought about being a guide, but just thought that it would be cool to be a guide. But I had no fishing background in my family whatsoever. So I never even thought about it. Didn't even think that was even possible.
Right.
So no, never really, never thought about being a guide. So I was going out there to have fun. Just, this is Jupiter. There's snook all around. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go fish for the snook. So, every morning it would be me and my buddy Colton out there, just having the blast out there in the canoe. And
you're learning this on your own. You didn't have a mentor. Your father didn't show you the tips and tricks for snook fishing or anything like that?
No, not really. Again, he probably showed me how to put a worm on a hook when I did the bass fishing thing, and that was it. No one since then has ever showed me anything. I just started just from the bottom, catching those small ones with the crappie jig and trial and error. You lose your first big snook and you're like, oh, what did I do wrong? Well, you didn't even have leader on your hook or anything,
right. But I think you did have an inspiration with Flip Pallet when you're like 10 years old watching his show.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
Did that lead you to the fishing aspect, or it was already naturally embedded?
I think that's what made me like fishing for sure. I can remember very well. I can't remember much from when I was this young, but maybe 10 or 11 years old, but I can remember vividly sitting on the couch, ESPN Saturday or Sunday, they switched it around, and my dad was cooking breakfast and we were watching Flip Pallet and Jose Wahebi, every weekend. And at that time, that's when I was probably still just bass fishing. I was probably just going to my grandma's on the weekend bass fishing and then watching them. And then I probably didn't start saltwater fishing until, 15, when I could start riding my bike with my friends around and fishing some of the local bridges and whatnot here. 10 years ago here, or now 15 years ago, in Jupiter, you could ride all around and fish all kinds of places. There was still a bunch of lots that were not houses. There was still woods. You could go find places where you could go fish. That you can't do anymore today. Every square inch is now a seawall of some sort and a big mansion.
Let's go back to the canoe and the evolution of finding and all of a sudden putting big snook on Instagram.
Right. So when I started fishing the canoe, it opened up a huge door because now I was fishing parts of the river that I've never even been in, and what was really good about the canoe is you had to fish an area once you were there. It wasn't like you could just pick up and go run 2 miles to the other side of the river. So once we put in, we fished areas heavily. And so over time, over 3 or 4 years of me doing this on the canoe, I knew every single dock in the river. I knew which docks were going to hold snook. I knew where every sandbar was, where the mullet are going to be. And just from then, history kind of repeated itself every year, and I would just slowly fine-tune my spots every year. And then at this time, I'm still not thinking anything about being a guide, just going out there with my buddies, having a good time on the canoe.
So at what point did you find this? I mean, when people think of your name, Ryan Nitz, they think of monster snook, 40-inch snook. When did you find where these big snook live? Is there a certain zone, and were you fishing that zone as a kid on your John boat, or what? How did you get back in there, find that spot, and consistently catch 40-inch snook?
In the summertime here, it doesn't take much to find them. They're pretty much all around the river in the summertime. You can catch a 40-incher in any part of the river. But for the most part, with the canoe, I was limited. I couldn't really come out to the inlet. I couldn't come out to the bays on windy days. So it put me in the back part of the river more than anything. And that's where I really fine-tuned everything. And that's where, I would start to see fish that you probably wouldn't have ever seen if you came around the corner with an outboard, because those fish would hear you coming, they'd hear that outboard, and they would sink down. Well, when on a canoe, you're super stealthy. They don't even know what's coming. So I was seeing fish that I would never seen before on a boat if I came through there on a boat, because they, like I said, they would sit up high, they'd hear you or whatever, you're jumping around, and they would sink down. You'd never see them. That boat wake would come through, they'd go down. So the canoe just opened up tons of doors for me. I could go wherever I wanted, stealthy. I would have a 5-gallon bucket in there. That was my live well. I could keep 5 or 6 mullet in there at most before they started to die.
Did you have an aerator?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But the mullet I'm using are 10-inch mullet, so you can only fit so many in there and have them alive for so long. So if I put a dozen in there, they're not going to live. So
Right.
I'd get my 5 or 6 mullet, and I would just every morning for 3 or 4 hours in the morning, I'd go figure out. You troll a mullet around for a while, you'll know where they're at. They're going to find them.
So did you have a trolling motor with the canoe?
Yeah. So it was
You didn't even have like a regular motor.
No, just straight trolling motor. It was the cheap $100 one from Walmart, minkoda, whatever it is, freshwater one. And I bought a $100 battery, and you just hook that sucker up. And
So what kind of range did you have? Yeah.
some days I overdid it.
So you tapped out and have to row back?
Yeah, you'd be out there all day, and I'm like, we got to keep fishing. And then you go to head back, and you have like maybe a mile to get back, and the troll motor's just not going anywhere.
Did you take oar with you?
Always.
Yeah. I'm
always
sure.
had an
I'm
oar
sure.
with me. But on a good day with a brand new battery, I could run, I could creep at 3 miles an hour, and go maybe 2 miles this way and then make it 2 miles back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so cool, as a young kid learning your trade that will eventually, take you places, which your trade did. You mentioned earlier about wading, and you hunt barefooted and you fish barefooted. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so wading, I just would go out there, like I said, up to my chest, really, and just every day I would wade. I never thought anything of it. I knew there was obviously sharks and everything, but never crossed my mind to be worried about it.
But cutting your feet on oysters or whatever.
I just thought that was part of it,
And that evolved to hunting deer barefooted, not in socks, but barefooted.
Yeah, barefoot, just straight barefoot, just board shorts and barefoot. It's super stealthy.
No, I get that, but I'm thinking about splinters and cactuses in the
Snakes.
west.
Oh yeah, and that all comes with it. But it's just I've done it so long, I just think that's the normal of it. Definitely, I can't tell you how many times, especially in the summer, even today, even this summer coming up, you'll see me limping around. Because I'm out there trying to catch, mullet on the oyster flat and barefoot.
Interesting. Do you feel like you're a little bit of a pioneer because you developed this fishery and found these big fish in your canoe that no one else could find?
I'm sure, there was people doing it before me. I think I definitely put some light on it with social media. I've done a couple shows, I've done a couple YouTube videos, and just obviously with my Instagram, people probably seen Jupiter and seen, never knew that was going on there ever.
Is there any regret with that?
No, I don't regret any of it, just because, it's made me who I am. And I don't mind the fact, I love that I have people all the time, all young kids all the time saying, I love what you're doing. I love what you do. And it really inspires them. And people write me that all the time. So that's cool. On the pressure of the fish wise, I'm starting to see it now, or, we've been seeing it, what social media can do to the fishery. And I don't regret it because I'm still here and I'm ready to do maybe the opposite, maybe try and use my platform to show, okay, look what's happening now. Look what social media has done. And it's not just social media. There's obviously a million factors today that are against our population of fish and the estuary. But now that I have a platform built on that, I can use my platform to do good.
Right.
Sure, for other reasons, yeah.
For other reasons.
So this zone, is it a zone that you found that these big fish lay up and cruise the shorelines where you can sight fish them? Or is that all throughout Jupiter? Or is it very specific zones?
There's definitely specific zones where they'll be very more conjugated than others, but every day is different. Every year is different. Jupiter, again, we have so much construction going on here with, they're redoing the bridges now and there's barges everywhere. And, they're always dredging sandbars and putting, more sand over here, or they dredge the inlet and that all disrupts the fish at some point. So every year is different, but there are, I would say I have, 5 or 6 good spots that I'm going to pull up and there's going to be one sitting there.
What's the best time to target a big snook? Time of year?
May through September. And that's, obviously that's when they come and do their spawning thing. That's, June, July, and August is when they spawn on the full moons. They'll conjugate at the inlet. Last year was a little slow. number wise, I don't think there was as many fish as there should have been. And that's obviously because probably pressure of some sort. But back, 10 years ago, you could pull up to the inlet and there'd be a black knot of them for hundreds of yards.
I got a question about that. In the West, all the fly fishermen, it's almost like a peer pressure thing. Don't fish over reds. When these fish are spawning, leave them alone.
Right.
This is how they procreate.
Absolutely. And
you think snook should be protected in the summer when they're spawning? Because now they're so vulnerable.
So, 5 years ago, if you would ask me that, I would have said, no, it's fine. And as each year goes on, and I see it more and more, absolutely, we need to start thinking about something with the snook population. The numbers last year were minimal. Again, like I said, you could see a pod 10 years ago that were, hundreds and hundreds of yards long, 10 feet high, thousands of snook. This last summer, there was maybe 2 or 3 pods there that were maybe the size of, a half of a basketball court, maybe a couple hundred fish in there.
And how many people were fishing over it?
Way too many.
There you go.
The biggest thing, so, again, I would be, don't get me wrong, the inlet fishery is some of the best fishing you can ever have. And for me being a guide, it's easy. I can bring someone who's never caught a snook before. I can go to the inlet, drop down a bait, boom, you just caught a fish of a lifetime.
But the damage that's being done. But wouldn't you say, hey, I'm going to go find you a snook somewhere else. We're not going to go to the inlet. And by you doing that, and by you posting this on Instagram, hey guys, let's leave these guys alone. We're losing our fishery. Don't you think that would be more good than taking a newbie in there and doing the damage that everybody is doing?
100%. And this is the year that I'll probably start pushing that. I'd much rather see, close the inlet down or close half of the inlet down. Make some zones where, you just can't fish for snook right here, whether it's just even June or July or whatever. They're prime months.
Right.
If you really care about the snook, you would be okay with that. And what it is, the problem is we just have so many people who now know that Jupiter is a hotspot for snook. What they'll do is, they come from all over the place. And a big thing that I kind of want to push too, which, I get it. Commercial fishermen have to make money. Bait fishermen have to make their money. But the croakers are a big thing here. So, these guys will have boatloads of croaker. And all these guys from all over will come here. They'll buy croaker from them. And they'll sit on those spawning fish for 10 hours a day. I'm not joking. There will be 15 boats sitting on these fish, 10 hours a day, dropping croakers on them, catching them one after another. And, a lot of times those guys don't know how to handle a snook when they catch them. They'll catch these 40-inch snook. They'll bring them on the boat. They'll pass them around. 5 different people take pictures with them. They're bear hugging them and whatnot. And then they just throw them right back in. They don't revive them. They don't do anything. They just toss them back in. I can't tell you how many times I'll come off anchor, go grab that fish, and spend 20 minutes with that fish just trying to give it a chance. Another thing is, but like I said, so with the croakers, the fact that they can go there, just buy croaker and sit there and do that is bad. So if you took out that croaker or the bait fishery, I feel like a lot of these guys wouldn't be able to do that.
So go catch your own croakers.
Go catch your own bait. I just don't like the commercial sale of bait fish.
Do you buy your bait, or do you
never
go catch
ever
your own?
once have I bought bait? I'm out there every morning with my cast net catching mullet. I don't really use croakers, just for that fact. I don't need to. I like it. I like catching bait. I like throwing that net in the morning.
Right.
That's my workout.
Yeah, we do too. I
love
suck
it
at
too.
it, but Nikki's pretty good.
No, we love it.
I'll tell you funny about throwing a cast net. So we were down in Miami, and they have that aquarium, the sea aquarium, right by the Rickenbacker Causeway. So at this stage, we were going to go bait fishing that night. And I was in there, and I was going to throw my cast net, and I had my other son, who was very young, and my ex-wife said, "You can go fishing as long as you take Alex." So I took Alex, and I said, "Okay, if I'm going to go fishing, I need help." So I grabbed the nanny. I said, "Come on, we're going to go fishing." And she's an English lady, way overweight. She has no idea what we're going to do. I go into the sea aquarium, and there's mullet everywhere, So I go, and when I go to throw my cast net, I threw it, and I kind of followed through, and I stepped right off the bow of my boat. So my cast net covers all these fish. It sinks to the bottom, and I'm in there. Now I've got my rope in my wrist. I'm climbing up on the boat, pull my net up, dump the mullet into the bait well, and my nanny goes, "Wow, I've never seen fishing like that before."
She thought it was supposed to be.
It's supposed to be just like that. You know?
A lot of times I'll go out there and catch bait before the charter, but a lot of people love watching me do that. They've never seen anything like that. So I've kind of incorporated that into the charter.
I think it's awesome.
The first 30 minutes, you're going to watch me sling that net around, and they love it. I'll dump the mullet on the deck, and they'll try and scoop them up, for the first time. And that's just a part of the trip now.
No, that's awesome. Good for you. Let's go back to the fun things. We got our conservation voice in there. When you first started posting these big fish, did you get a lot of people complaining? Your naysayers, like, what are you doing with all your Instagram stuff?
Yeah, of course. Before I had 50,000 followers and I only had 5,000 followers. I started posting all these things. All the local kids that I used to go to school with, or even not the local kids. They're like, "Oh, who do you think you are? You think you're a snook fisherman? You think you're a good snook fisherman?" And I quickly learned to just let that roll over my back. I could care less. They can go at it. For me, it was more advertisement for me at this point. Go ahead and talk about me all you want. I don't care.
But was this at this point you said initially it was the beauty of the video that you were posting. It wasn't about you and holding big fish. It was all about the fishery.
I was just doing what I did organically. I'd go out there and I'd catch a big snook and I'd take a picture of it. I'd take, the videos speak for itself. It's just what you see is what you got.
What I saw, which was really cool, it was all about the fish biting. It was not about, look at this fish I got.
Right. But what I've also done, though, is took the time to incorporate, because I've done wildlife photography at one point. Again, when I got the GoPro, when I started with a GoPro, that sparked a little bit of wildlife photography in me. And so after the GoPro, I was like, I need something more. I need an actual camera that can zoom in and whatnot. So I took a loan out and bought a Nikon camera. And that's when I started doing a lot of wildlife photography. Mostly with the turkeys and some of the Florida bucks, and kind of showcasing the wildlife Florida has to offer. A lot of people don't know, but Florida is still very wild. It's not just condos and beaches and whatnot. So I started doing that, and it slowly led into, I actually even made a website, made some money off some prints doing wildlife photography. And so.
When did you think I'm going to become a guide now? I'm catching all these fish. I want to be a guide.
Well, so with the photography, when I started catching these big fish, I incorporated my photography with the big fish. So I was starting to showcase these fish in a proper way that they needed to be showcased. I was getting some cool angles. And also a big thing that I've always been big on is, handling the fish. You can go on my page, you'll never see a fish vertical, ever. And I've done this since day one. And people were always like, "Oh, well, you're the one who hammers most of the 40-inch fish more than anyone," and that may be true. But I promise you'll see me handle every one of those fish with more care than you probably should. Even with my clients, if I don't just put a 40-inch fish in anybody's hands, because I know how that goes with a lot of people. You throw a 40-inch fish in someone's hands who's never held one, that fish is going to do a kick, and it's going to get slapped onto the deck, and so forth. So a lot of times, I got it down to a science. You sit them down on the cooler, you grab the fish. When you grab the fish initially, they do that initial kick. Then you put it on the client. The camera's already ready to go. You take the picture, boom, straight
Back
into the
water.
water. It's a 20-second process at most. And I've never, ever had one go belly up because of that. You won't see it. You take the time to make sure that they stay wet. You get the picture, you go. But again, and now if I know the client's not worthy of holding it, we get in the water. And sometimes that's the coolest thing ever, is that, in the heart of the summer, to get in that water and just get with the fish is awesome. And it makes for an awesome photo. These guys can hang on to it for their lifetime. I've had grown men cry at the end of the trip. Like last year I had a father and a son. They were probably 75 and 55. And we had one of the best snook fishing days of the summer. And I got pictures of him with their, together with doubles, and at the end of the day, the guy came over to me, the younger son, and was in tears and said, "I've never, ever had a memory like this with my dad." And, I sent him the photos, and he was just looking at these photos, and he's like, "I will hang on to these forever."
Right.
And so that right there was like, that's awesome.
Very cool. What was that transition like to go into guiding full time? Because I know you had a stable. you were doing pest control, correct?
Right. So back to your question, how I got into guiding. So I was doing pest control for my girlfriend's father. This was probably from, when I was 20 to 25, fresh out of high school, I started doing it. Got all the pest certifications because after doing it for so many years, you can do it yourself. So after that, I did all the pest certifications. I was certified pest control operator. And at that point, I had maybe, 20 grand saved up. And I was like, at this point, I still wasn't thinking about charter. Let's say I'm 24, 25, still not thinking charter. And I had Tom rolling with the Saltwater Experience. They came and did a show. And when that show aired, I had like 200 and something emails. Now, at that time, I was always getting asked through Instagram on DMs, hey, do you do charters? Do you charters? And I was like, no, I don't do that. I don't do that. And then after that show aired and I had all those emails, I'm sitting there like scrolling through my phone. I'm like, all right, what am I doing killing cockroaches? Like I got 200 people right now ready to go fishing. So right then and there, I didn't buy a work truck. I didn't buy a route. I went to sea school, got my captain's license, got a Ranger Phantom sitting in the driveway still, and started guiding. And the good thing is my clients were already ready to go. I didn't have to just go out there in the dark. The day I had got my license, I've been booked ever since.
How many trips did you do that first year? And was there ever a time period in that first calendar year where you're like, you had a lull and you were like, fuck, I don't know if I can make this work?
Never. It was full blast since day one. As soon as I started, I had people, once I made a post saying, hey guys, I have my license now. I'm legal to take anyone fishing. Ever since then, it's been balls to the wall, booked constantly through the summer. I start turning people away. I started sending them to some of the other local guys. There's a lot of older guides here that don't do social media. And, that was a whole nother thing when I first started guiding. They're looking at me because, being introduced into the guide world is, a pretty crazy thing. Every place has, that mentality. You get a young gun in there. They're like, who's this guy? And
you're booked daily and they're looking at you
daily and they're like, what the heck?
Right.
But again, I was cool with them. The first couple of years, they gave me the cold shoulder, would run by me full speed, or just never look twice. But once they figured out that I'm booked every day, and they probably sooner or later saw me on social media, they became friendly, and I never held it against them. I get it.
They ever say, "Where you fishing, son?"
They do.
They tell you, where are you fishing?
Oh, yeah. No, it's funny to watch the transition happen from where they wouldn't say a word to me to where they'd be like, hey, man, so, how'd you do yesterday? And I'd be like, pretty damn good. How'd you do? And they're like, so it was cool. And again, I totally get it. Never held it against them. And to this day now, we're all really close. Here in Jupiter, there's not too many guides. It is a pretty, we do have big snook in the summer, but overall it's a pretty tough fishery. It's very small body of water. So to be consistent is pretty tough. So there's only maybe 5 or 6 really good, reputable handful of guides here in Jupiter on the inshore side.
Right. Let me ask you this. Over this last couple of years, we've had a lot of discussions about spot ownership. Has anybody followed you and all of a sudden you get to your spot and there's already somebody in your spot that learned it from you or caught you there?
100%. All the time. It happens all the time. And, with me, I'm just so easygoing. I at one point, if it's too much, I'll say something like, come on, man, whatever. But for me, if I pull up to a spot and there's 2 boats there that probably watched me the day before, that's fine. Have it. I'll go. I got plan B. I got plan C. I got plan D, E.
Good for you.
I got it all. So I don't worry about it. I really don't.
Interesting. And then during the wintertime, you don't fish as much. You're a hunting guide, correct?
Yeah, I kind of turn into a bum come September.
So what's your yearly schedule?
A bum? What's that mean?
No job, just I'm in a tree.
So you hunt for yourself?
Yeah, that's me time. So my schedule right now for the most part is March and April. I turkey hunt every day. I run people turkey hunts. I got turkey hunters every day for pretty much 8 weeks straight. May 1st, beginning of the summer, it's 120 days straight of snook fishing. And all of May, all of June, all of July, all of August, I'm out there every day, with the exception of maybe a few Sundays. And maybe that's to get the boat service probably.
Right. So what's a day of snook fishing like? I mean, when we tarpon fish, we leave at 6 a.m. and we come off the water at 7 p.m. It's like a solid 10, 11-hour days.
No, for me, it's a little, I've fine-tuned it over the last few years. I started off doing that, you can do a 4-hour trip, you can do an 8-hour trip. But now I just offer, it's a 6-hour trip. That's it. And that's usually in the summertime, you don't want to be on the water from 12 to 3. You will die. It's so brutal. Hot. So my trips are 6 to 12. That's what it is in the summer. Some days I'll do 2 trips, and if I do an afternoon trip, it's usually only a 5-hour trip. It's 4 to 9, because the snook fishing can be very, very good at night in the summertime.
And what do you charge for a day, or that half day or a day is that day of 6 hours? What do you charge?
So when I first started, it was $450. Because I came from cockroaches. I used to work my ass off for 8-10 hours a day, and I'd make $88 after taxes. So when I took my first charter out and they handed me $500, I felt like I just robbed the guy.
It's free money.
I was like, are you kidding me? Like, here, take some of this back. And they're like, no, this was great. So every year, obviously, the big thing is trying to live the Jupiter lifestyle here. So it's very expensive to live here. And over time, I think I'm worthy of it. I for the most part, if you come fishing with me, you're going to catch a giant. But I've learned over time that you can't, it's business, and I'm trying to make a living out of it. So this year, with my new boat being built, you're looking at $800 probably for a 6-hour trip.
It's about the same as the Keys tarpon guides. $800, some are $1,000.
Yeah, it's pretty standard nowadays.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, you want to try to do this on your own, or you want to hire a guide. Here's another question. I'm a little bit guilty of this, because I hired guides for 35 years when I was tournament fishing. I was always fishing with serious, refined guides, usually just a couple. Now I have my own boat and I fish with my son. And I know all those spots. And I kind of wonder, have I earned those spots? Have I earned the right to fish with my son down there? And some of the guys, there's only a couple, that think that I should just still be hiring guides and fishing with my son. I should not have my boat with my son fishing down there on my own, because I learned all those spots with them.
Well,
here's a question I have for you. Are you a little bit worried about taking people fishing? They see where you fish. Now they have their boat and they emulate your spots and your routine.
I just don't worry about it. A big thing I do to kind of counteract that is I handpick every one of my clients for the most part now. I have such a long list of people that want to go fishing that, I can go through my thing and say, that looks like a spot stealer. You're not coming. You look like it. Oh, you live 4 hours away from here?
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And so I've done that. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely been a few. And there's even guys who will hit me up and say, look, I'm coming back down for the summer. It's just going to be me and the family. Do you mind if I go fishing where you took me? And if you ask me that, 100% of the time, I'm going to say, absolutely, dude. I'm not one of those guys who are going to be like, hey, because when it comes down to it, I don't own that water. Whether I'm a guide or not, that's public land. Mm-hmm. So I've just never been one to really be a stinker about that. But I think there's times, if I took there are a couple kids that I've took fishing, and the next 3 days they'll be sitting in that spot. That's when I think it's a little much. That's when I'll say, hey man, I just took you here yesterday. I'm trying to make a living over here. Like, do you mind? And most of the time they'll be like, oh, okay. And they'll move on.
Right.
And that's just the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
And like I said, I can't be that way because I've made the videos. I've made,
Sure.
I've done TV shows. I've done the YouTube videos. For me to sit there and say, hey, you can't fish here, that'd be a little,
right.
Yeah. Well, it's good on you, for sure.
I had a friend that wanted to fish Charleston the other day, and so I was reaching out to my buddy who lived in Charleston. He recommended these 2 guides, and I reached out to them, and he said, well, does your friend live in Charleston? I was like, no, but why you ask? And he's like, well, I don't take anybody from Charleston fishing in Charleston. They don't take any locals.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to me.
It's smart,
Yeah, but I would think that it'd be really hard to fill your calendar.
Well, you got to. I can see why. I mean, you've got a great perspective on the whole thing. I got to hand it to you. I think that's a great way to look at it. Hey, can I bring my family? I'm only going to be there in town for a couple of days, no problem. But your buddies that steal your spot and sit on it, I get it. I mean, there's really a balancing act with that whole thing.
Right.
100%.
And besides snook, I've been seeing you post a lot about Cubera snapper. and tagging and doing the science of the Kibera snapper. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's my fish. That's something.
That's your fish. That's your favorite.
Yeah,
really?
Just because nobody knows how to catch them. No one's out there really hammering the Kiberas like that. I mean, there's a couple people, I'm sure. But
so these are Kiberas over the Brex.
No. Yeah, there's sometimes they're in the river. They'll be in the super smaller ones. You'll get like some of the 5-pounders that are in the river. Sometimes you'll catch them on top waters, rarely. But for the most part, there's a couple rocks that I have in about 20 to 30 foot of water that I've just fine-tuned. You get the right gear. Those fish, though, are bulldogs. So when I first started guiding...
They are good.
Oh, my gosh.
But this is inside the inlet.
Some of them are inside the inlet. Some of them are right at the inlet, and some of them are right outside of the inlet.
Gotcha.
But anywhere between 15 and 30 foot of water, there's some, and most of those spots I found are from snorkeling. I would jump in at high tide, swim around. You'll see a rock that's holding 15 or 20 of them. Keep that in mind. You come back on a dirty tide and fish them in the dirty. I like fishing dirty water. I just do.
Right.
And that's when we'd get them. But when I first started fishing for them, I only had spinning rods. And I'd be out there with like a 6,000 spinning rod, and you'd catch a 45-inch snook on a 6,000, no problem. Well, then you'd hook into this Kibera, and you couldn't even turn them. And at the time, I didn't know they were Kiberas, and I'd be like, "What the heck was that? Was that a Goliath grouper?" So I went and bought some toriums, some 20 and 30 wide toriums. Went back to the same spot. I'd hook into one of them, and I'm like, "Oh, this is what was getting me." And when I brought up my first Kibera, it was like this big, and I'm like, holy crow, these things can throw down.
Yeah, they can.
But over time, I've just, kind of made that a little niche that I can offer. People love the Kiberas. FWC reached out to me through email one day and was like, "Hey, we've been trying to catch these things for years, trying to tag them, and we can't, it's hard for us to do that. Can you help us out?" And I was like, "Sure." So I got all the biologists on speed dial, and when I catch one, I'll throw it in the live well. I'll meet the biologist down at the beach somewhere. They come out, they put them in a cooler, and they literally make an incision in their stomach, take these transmitters, put them in there, sew them back up. They'll put an external tag in them, and I keep up with them, and they'll tell me what they've been doing a couple months after I release them. There's transmitters all around Florida, I guess, where they'll swim by it and it'll ping, and that shows what happened. And they want to know like how many of them are getting killed after release, or where are they going. For instance, like one I let go, like 2 months later, it swam 40 miles north and went to Fort Pierce. And so that's
crazy. You'd think that a fish like that likes structure would hang right there.
It would be his home. Yeah.
Well, what I think it is a lot of the fish that I'm catching are those teenagers. So they're coming out of the estuaries. They're starting to beef up. They're 20 pounds maybe.
They're chasing chicks, baby.
Yeah, they're chasing chicks, and they're figuring out where do they want to live.
Yeah. No, that's cool. What else do you want to add to the Snook stuff before we get into the hunting and turkeys and your friend?
I want to let the younger generation know that they go out there now and they catch snook and they think it's great. I'm just here to let you know that it's not as good as it was. And every year for the last 10 years, I've noticed a decline. And another thing is, I think I'm not against tournaments whatsoever. Tournaments are great, they're fun and whatever. But there's certain things in tournaments, like so. For instance, there's tournaments down here that are all summer long. It's a 3-month tournament online where you can pay $20 or $50 for an entry fee, and they have categories like most 40-inch snook. Well, what that does is every kid puts in their $20. They're all out there all night long for 3 months for bragging rights, to say, "Oh, I caught 45 snook over 40 inches." And I just think it just puts a bad taste in my mouth. It just you're sitting here for 3 months pounding these breeding fish to win a $500 prize fee and some bragging rights. So certain things like that I think need to be kind of thought about. And
do you think these kids would be out there anyway, even though it would not be a tournament?
They would be, but they wouldn't be trying to catch as many as they were. And a big thing. And I hate saying this, but the bridge fishermen are brutal on these fish. I'll be out there on a night trip, and what they'll do is they'll catch these big fish and they'll bring them up in these nets. You drop a net down, they'll get them, and they're up there. I can hear the fish flopping around on the concrete forever, and they're taking pictures of them, and then they throw them off the bridge.
Oh God.
And it makes me. I'll go to jail one day. It makes my blood boil, and you'll see that 42-inch snook that was probably 20 years old just drifting out into the darkness, belly up. I've seen it happen so many times.
Jeez.
And so I just think snook fishing, with social media, it was for a while, it was the cool thing to do. I think it has calmed down a little bit in, maybe the last year or two. Social media has kind of plateaued, I feel like, a little bit. But there's just so many kids and adults that are out there just doing it for the wrong reasons, whatever. Oh, look at me. So, but again, that's kind of how I made my name, taking pictures of these big fish. But again, I've always respected the fish as much as I could.
Right.
And so there's just a lot of pressure on these fish is what I want to make clear.
Here's an interesting dynamic in that some of the old time guys, Copeland and Tommy Green and David Justice, they would chase the bridges from up in this area all the way to Miami. They would chase the tide. So once the tide leaves, is the fishing over for these guys that are on the bridge and they go home? It's got to be a pretty narrow window.
It is
when it's good.
Very, very much so. I mean, there's times where you'll sit there for 4 hours and not catch a sink, not even get a bite. And then there's a 20-minute window where it's like
game on.
It's fish after fish after fish after fish. And I think, with again social media, people learn that when they're biting or what time they're biting, and I've seen 30 kids sitting on a bridge in one night. You come through and the whole bridge is just nothing but people throwing flare hawks and mullet and blah blah blah. And not to say that that's not bad, but right. I just, a lot of those kids aren't doing the right thing when they do finally catch a fish. They're smoking them, whether one way or another, banging them up and just not treating them the right way.
Now, what's the difference between catching these things during the daylight hours versus the evening? Because you catch a lot of your fish right in the middle of the day.
Yeah, pure daylight. I mean, noon is when I catch them the most.
Noon?
Noon, yeah. When the sun is right over you.
You can see better.
You can see them. They're glowing yellow. Nighttime though in the summer is definitely better. I mean, when it goes nighttime in the summer, it's game on. Those fish are eating anything they can get their hands on. They're spawning, so they're hungry. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's with flare hawks, which is, anywhere from a 1 ounce to a 3 ounce, just a big feather, if you will. And the problem with that, it's super effective, but a lot of times they choke that thing every single time they eat a flare hawk. That thing is in the throat of a snook. So it's just, again, you can't outlaw throwing flare hawks, but you can take your time with the fish as much as you can.
When you're sight fishing these snook up in the river, can you catch them on fly? Have you ever tried that?
So I bought my first fly rod finally last year. I didn't use it as much as I wanted to, just, because I'm full-time guiding and I just didn't have the day. But I've had a few guys do it. It's very possible. Again, you just got to know how to wiggle it right.
Sure.
A lot of
times
you
have to feed the fish.
You got to feed the fish. The problem is every fish is different. Some like it fast, some like it slow. And if you got a guy who hasn't seen it enough times and can't adapt to it, as it's happening, it just won't happen. They'll get it in front of them. They'll strip it to where the snook will turn and start to commit, but they usually can't finish it, whether they're not doing it too fast or they're doing it too slow. But this year, I'm going to get that fly rod out for sure. I'm going to do it.
It seems like it'd be a lot of fun targeting sight fishing.
Well, you talk about being organic, it's really cool in the canoe and the mullet. I love that. I love bait fishing. Nick and I have done it our whole lives. But a fly rod is, you take it to another level.
Well, I'll say this.
It's an art form.
For sure. I'll say this. I've caught a lot of 40-inch fish, and I still, to this day, give me a mullet, give me a circle hook, and let me catch one. I love it. But when I fished maybe the fly rod 1 or 2 times after I bought it this summer, the first time I had it in my hand, and I'm at the bow, and I see the first giant come in my way, oh my God, I came unglued. I was shaking like a leaf.
More nervous than even if you had...
Oh, yeah. If I had a spinning rod with a top water, I would have been like, oh, watch this. Boom. Easy. But I still love it. It's easy for me, but with that fly rod, that thing came down. I didn't even know what my name was at that point. I couldn't even get it out there, let alone start stripping it. And if God forbid the snook ate the fly, I wouldn't have even known what to do.
Have you fished for big tarpon much?
Not too much. So I have a new boat being built right now because right here in Jupiter, those tarpon migrate from, the Keys fish come right through here.
Sure.
And, I just haven't had the boat to get out on the outside and target them as much.
Right.
But this year with my new boat, I'm going to go out there and do a lot more tarpon fishing and hopefully take a little, pressure off the snook. And we also have a permit fishery that I want to kind of dial in on. There's permit out there sitting in 30 foot of water.
So are they floating on the surface out there?
They are.
Interesting.
Yeah, they are. They're on, they'll be sitting on some type of rock structure, but they'll just be sitting up high. So that's something I want to kind of tap into because I love a challenge. And,
also you want something new too.
It's going to open up a completely different world for you.
For sure.
And
the sailfish. So, it's going to be a smaller boat still, but there are going to be days that me and my client can run out there at 7 a.m, go catch a sailfish, and then come in and catch a 40-inch snook.
Sure.
So
you can charge $2,000 a day.
Yeah, right.
Well, we were talking earlier before we got set up, and I think my father asked you whether you were like, snook or turkey. What do you like more? And you said turkey without a doubt. And everyone we talked to has this obsession with Florida turkeys. And we were talking about Colorado Merriam turkeys and whatnot, and they were like, no. That's like, they didn't even bat an eye. What is it about the Osceola turkey that is so sought after?
They're swamp birds. They're very weary. It's not like an Eastern.
Swamp bird mean they're smarter.
They're smart. They come from, they're not a Merriam out there in the middle of a giant open field with, hundreds of other turkeys. These birds, a lot of times, you won't see big flocks of Osceolas for the most part. You'll see small flocks. They're way more of an aggressive bird. They're the smallest bird of them all, but they're swamp birds. They live in the terrain where it's very tight. They don't take chances. They're not going to scream their head off like a Merriam or an Eastern, in the hills. They for the most part, they'll gobble a few times on the limb. As soon as they touch that bottom of the grass, they land, that's it. They shut up. Unless it's obviously.
What do you mean aggressive? You said they're aggressive birds.
They're aggressive as meaning that they fight a lot. They're very prone to fighting with each other. You throw a full strutting decoy out there, 9 times out of 10 they're going to come.
So they're easier to kill because of that.
They can
possibly,
yeah. But yeah, once you have a bird that's committed to it, don't get me wrong, they can be very easily killed. But overall, I think they're definitely the hardest out of the 4 subspecies in North America.
How difficult is it to kill them on public land versus private land?
Now every day is harder and harder. Osceolas are the money bird out of them. So, for instance, you can kill an Eastern obviously from North Florida to Maine. So what that done again with social media, everybody in North America wants to come kill an Osceola. Well, they're only found in half of the state. So it's a huge supply and demand issue. And, you got all these new hunting YouTube shows, public land do-it-yourself hunts, and they come down here and they do the episodes. And next thing you know, you have a influx of out-of-state hunters applying for the Osceola tags. I haven't drawn a tag myself in 3 years now, which, just through the reissue system, because there's so many people applying for it, you're just never going to get one. It took my dad 6 years to finally pull a tag, and that's just because he built up his points. So there's a lot of things with that too that I could get into that I'd like to see. Like, for instance, your turkey permit. They charge like $10 for a turkey permit. I don't know how much they charge the outstate hunters, but I know it's not that much.
What's a permit mean? Is it a guide?
No, just to kill one.
A tag.
A tag. Okay. $10? Yeah.
$10. Make that sucker $1,000.
Mm-hmm. Right.
How bad do you want it? You want to come down here and kill an Osceola? We'll pay $1,000 because that's what the bird deserves at this point. The destruction of land around here is, there's so many there are places that I used to hunt back in the day, 15 years ago, are condos, lots of them.
Yeah.
And so, you're taking out, there's less and less land every day. There's more hunters. Charge the money, put it back into the conservation of the bird, whatever way it needs to happen. But yeah, so the public land, luckily for me, I've made a career out of turkey hunting now, to where I lease a bunch of private land myself. And so what that's done is it's kind of taken me out of the public land. I don't hunt public land as much as I used to.
How expensive is it to lease land?
On arm and a leg. It's ridiculous. And that's like what I was saying. Like, you can go kill an Eastern for $500. The Osceola hunts now are, they're $3,000. And that reflects into my lease.
That's what they pay you to go kill an Osceola? $3,000. And you say you can take him out at 9 in the morning that you can kill a bird by noon. Get the hell out of here.
Give me my money. Goodbye. Give me another hunter.
You're smart cookie.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong. A lot of that's going to go to the lease fees.
Right. You have a lot of overhead.
How much land do you have?
Probably around 4,000 acres at this point.
It's just you yourself
just me.
lease that?
Just me.
How many, is that one property?
No, it's probably 5 or 6 different properties. One of them's 2,000, one of them's 600, one of them's 30. There's just a couple different pieces, but it's some of the most beautiful land you can see in South Florida.
Nikki, you want to become a turkey guide?
And you're also working for Florida Outdoor Experience with Gray Drummond, correct?
Yep. So I do that down here myself, is what we just talked about. And then I go, so the good thing about Florida is the turkey season's divided into 2 sections. You got North Zone, you got South Zone. We're in South Zone where I'm at, meaning we open up March 4th this year. And the North Zone where Gray Drummond is doesn't open up till March 18th. So from March 4th to March 18th, I got clients every day. I try and kill as many as I can before I go up there and help them out up there. So my schedule is basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I hunt here. And then Thursday, we have clients fly in up there, and I hunt them Thursday through Sunday. And what's nice about that is it calms me down, because when I'm doing it myself down here, it's turn and burn. I got a guy, we kill, I'm calling the next guy saying, hey, can you come now? Like, there's another bird out here, let's go. Well, when I go up there to FOE, it's more of a wine and dine type thing. You're going to go up there, you're going to go to a beautiful lodge. 5-star, the food's great. Everyone there, Gray is awesome. Everyone who has as guides were handpicked from Gray. They are awesome dudes, and a couple ladies. And it's just a cool, I go up there, I get one person, and I have them for 3 days.
Right.
So I don't have to rush. You can really learn the client. You can, be friends with them. And
really enjoy the experience.
Really have a good experience.
Yeah, we just stayed at his lodge over there. We were up there interviewing Steve Kilpatrick, who's the guide of the 202-pound world record tarpon.
Yep.
And we met Gray. What an awesome cat, man! And we stayed at that lodge right on the Swanee River.
It's awesome, and so that's what I love about it most is when we're done turkey hunting, it's that camaraderie. You got Steve there, you got Flip Pallets there sometimes.
Yeah, tell us that story you told about Flip. You're filming Flip for what was the film for?
Well, no. So at one point, Flip was a guide. He doesn't do it too much now, but when I first started working for FOE, he was a guide. And so what would happen is all the guides would go out. We would all have our own client. And if my client killed the first day. So after that, Gray would use me as a media guy because I did the wildlife photography and I knew how to work a camera. So after my client killed, I would go out with the other guys and just get content for whatever. So my guy killed the one day. And so the next day, Gray's like, why don't you go with Flip? And I was like, oh, cool. All right. So we got different hunting techniques, me and Flip. Again, I'm young. I like to turn him. I like to go. And when I hear a bird, let's go get him. Well, with Flip, it's a little different. So I was the cameraman on this hunt, so I stayed back and let Flip do his thing. Well, walking through the woods with Flip is real slow. He likes to look at every leaf. He likes to take it all in, which is great. But the bird's gobbling. Let's go. So like 9 o'clock, we get to this area, and I had a client. His name was Jimmy, cool dude, but not really a turkey hunter. A lot of these guys up there are more business guys. Sure. They're not real big turkey hunters. And so I got Jimmy. So we sit down in this blind, and I'm sitting here. I got Jimmy here, and Flip's on the other side. And we're sitting there, and I got my camera. I'm ready for whatever. And a bird gobbles, and he was right there. And the bird, next thing you know, is just coming right down the line. And so I get the camera, I start, I'm looking at the bird coming in. I look, Jimmy's not doing anything. He's just sitting there.
He's frozen.
He's frozen. He don't know what to do. So I'm just, I'm not the guide. So I'm just getting the bird, coming down, and the bird's getting close, and I'm like not trying to move. And next thing I know, the bird's like, right there, like 30 yards.
Shoot it.
So I'm like, so I look over, I'm like, Jimmy, I look over, Flip's out like a light. He's over there passed out. So I'm like,
he's taking a snooter.
He's taking a little snoozer. So I'm like, Jimmy, get your gun up right now and shoot this bird. So, as he's picking his gun up in the little bit of the commotion, Flip kind of comes to, and, Jimmy shot the bird right there, but it was just funny.
That's so cool. Funny. It's, tell me what you've learned from Flip being a young guy.
Flip's he's got a really unique way of how passionate he is, and how he's definitely how I want to be in 40 years. He just takes his time with everything. He appreciates the smaller things in life. He's never in a rush. He's just a great storyteller. Really puts you back in the day. You sit down and listen to him. It just, you go back in time. He's a very unique character.
Right.
Well, we got to fish one day, Ryan.
I'm ready whenever you guys are ready.
Yeah, well, it's really been a pleasure.
No, I appreciate you.
You are so dialed with your world. And I think it not everybody has that ability to figure how to put one foot ahead of the other at a very young age. And you've done that. And you're very inspirational in that you're not only dialed with your fishery, but with conservation. And now you also hunt, you fish, your life is perfect.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I definitely can't complain. Thank you very much.
Man.
But to be honest with you, I have to say this. It's all because of my parents. You know, they gave me this foundation to where, you know, they let me stay at home for a long time, and they believed in me. Like, you know, I'm out there fishing. You know, some parents would be like, "You're not fishing. You know, go to school. You know, go to school," which I did. I went to college, got, you know, degree, my AA degree or whatever. But I was always good in school. But they always trusted that what I was doing, and for the most part, you know, to become the way I did, you know, you'd have to have that, because it all fell into place. You know, I had enough room to where I could go out there day after day after day after day. I didn't have to worry about rent. I didn't have to worry about all that. I was just out there doing it, and then it all happened organically.
Yeah.
So for that aspect, I'm very, very lucky, and I don't take any of it for granted. So
there you go. Let's give it a hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Andy.
All right.
When I saw it's West Side Story, when I saw it's just a